Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the AAS YouTube channel. And this one is in the AAS Journal Scientific Editor Series. And I'm very happy to have the ApJ Letter Deputy Editor, Lewis Ho, with us today. Hey, Lewis.
Hi, Frank. How are you doing?
I am doing okay in Arizona these days. It's we're still about 85 F or so in the day. It's been an unusually dry year. Even some of the saguaro cactuses have been dying off because of lack of water. So, but I'm doing well. How about you? What's your geolocation?
I'm currently in Southern California. So I am in my home in Arcadia. Arcadia is a little community just outside of Pasadena, in LA County.
Uh-huh.
So behind me right there is Mount Wilson. Luckily, the wildfires have died down, but we had to evacuate twice a month and a half ago. Yeah.
Wow. Well, I'm glad to see your house, and particularly that awesome bookcase behind you survived.
Yes.
Is that all astronomy?
No, mostly it's not. In fact, it's not.
Oh, okay.
I have broad interests.
Uh-huh. I see something on biology up there and some other stuff. You got some really old ones there, though. Looks like some leather-bound ones.
Yeah, it's from my college days.
Cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. So, Lewis, what do you like to do for research?
I'm sort of a jack of all trades, but if I had to describe myself, I am very passionate about galaxies, all aspects of galaxies, in small scales, large scales, their environments, low redshift, high redshift. I sort of view galaxies as an ecosystem.
Mm-hmm.
So essentially every aspect of it fascinates me. Particularly the major components of galaxies, the things that are, there are lots of bells and whistles, but there's certain very fundamental aspects ranging from the supermassive black holes in their centers to the bulges that they live in, and the different major structural components of galaxies, the accretion disks and around black holes, the jets that they launch.
Yep.
And then lately, I've been very interested in the raw material that makes stars and feed black holes, namely the gas. How to measure the interstellar medium, particularly in active galaxies and quasars, which is particularly challenging. And also, of course, how stars are formed in such environments. So what is the connection between the ISM and the stars that they should form sometimes, and sometimes they don't form because of the black hole is doing interesting things to them. So those issues have been sort of the focus of a lot of my research recently. I would say my work is maybe 90% observational and maybe even 10% numerical.
Oh.
I tend to use a lot of telescopes. I like to joke, but it's actually probably real that there's almost no telescope I've not touched.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, from big and smalls in space and in the ground, and everything from radio waves to high energy. That's.
So it's I know it's the JWST season. Did you happen to get a JWST proposal in?
Not as PI, but my group members have worked on a few things. It's hard to resist. It's very exciting indeed.
Yep, indeed.
Yeah.
I'm always kind of curious from a people perspective how people get into the field they do, right? With so many fields and given your eclectic or wide-ranging, I should say, interests. How did you get or settle into galaxies?
Almost by accident. Just like astronomy was completely by accident. So I got enamored with black holes very early on. I was just a sophomore in college.
Mhm.
So I did research on the galactic center. We now know there's a black hole, brown Sagittarius star. They even gave a Nobel Prize for that this year. But at that time, it was just a curious thing. So I started way back when. And then in graduate school, my interest sort of broadened to other galactic centers in the nearby universe. This was in the 90s. And then Hubble came along, and that made it possible to search for black holes for the dynamical signatures in nearby galaxies. So I got into that big time. We showed not only a black hole is commonplace, but they have an uncanny relationship with the galaxies in which they live. So that gave birth to this whole concept of galaxy black hole coevolution, AGN feedback, which is sort of the staple of galaxy formation these days. So yeah, so in some sense, I've been very consistent ever since I was I was an undergraduate.
So you don't have to spill, maybe some, articles you prefer not to, but what are some of the current research projects you're working on?
So quite a few things. So I still do quite a bit to try to improve the accuracy and precision of black hole masses in the centers of galaxies. So ALMA has been fantastic in this regard. Most people don't fully appreciate the amazing angular resolution that ALMA gives you. It's 10 times Hubble's, and effectively it's the same diffraction limit as a future 30-meter class telescope. So my colleagues and I have been using that very effectively to get really high precision, high accuracy masses. As I said, a lot of my focus, however, has turned to sort of long wavelengths, to dust and gas, properties of the interstellar medium, how that connects to star formation, how to measure star formation in quasars, which is a very complicated subject. Normally in a galaxy, you have multiple tools, but when you have a quasar, the radiation from the quasar really kind of overwhelms everything, and you have to reinvent the toolbox, so to speak, to be able to measure star formation rates. So I would say most of my research centers around these fairly large themes. But in recent months, and probably for the foreseeable future, actually my attention is gradually shifting to a longer term project. So China will, in 2024, launch a major space telescope. It's a 2-meter, so think of it as Hubble, kind of Hubble on steroids. Okay. It has a survey capability about 500 times that of HST. So it's an optical, you can think of it as an optical near UV version of Euclid or W first.
What's the name?
It's called a CSST, the Chinese Space Station Telescope.
Cool.
So it's a free-flying 2-meter telescope that's on the same orbit as the Chinese space station, which we launched 2 years before then. And it's going to dedicate a significant chunk of its time for a 10-year period to survey about half of the sky.
Excellent.
At HST-like resolution.
Awesome.
So China's leading this effort, and my university and my institute just got awarded a center to execute the science mission.
Nice.
So that's going to really consume a lot of my time.
That's the Kavli Institute in Beijing?
Yes.
Very nice. So let me get into the topic of the journals. What was your very first ApJ, AJ article?
Gee, if my memory will go back.
Okay, so it wasn't yesterday.
Um,
Uh,
my first paper was not in ApJ, but my first ApJ paper was 1993.
Okay.
I was a second year in grad school.
Okay.
Yeah, and I've been a loyal proponent of ApJ ever since. I think the vast majority, probably more than 90% of my papers have come out in ApJ or ApJ letters.
So then why did you decide to become a scientific editor?
Well, I guess there are various reasons. So before moving to China, I was a staff astronomer at Carnegie Observatories.
Ah, okay.
And it's a little known fact, but Carnegie's first director, George Ellery Hale, was the founder of ApJ.
Yes.
Okay. And that may have rubbed off on me. My next door neighbor was Alan Sandage.
Wow. Wow.
And, so there was a lot of scholarship, a lot of tradition, and it was sort of, I always viewed ApJ as having a lot of seriousness and gravitas. Not that they're not, not other fine journals, but I was very loyal to ApJ. So that's I like that. I like scholarship. I like journals. I like editorial process. In part because I'm a huge fan of science. That sounds weird to say as a scientist, but I really treasure the scientific process and what it means to do science and what it means to become a scientist and how to train scientists. And I always really value that and regard, of course, science as an institution would not function if it didn't have a system that works, right? It's really an institution, in much like other institutions like democracy, okay? That people have to believe in it. They have to trust it, and it has to be nurtured and sustained. So I think that those of us who practice science, in my opinion, I have a sort of an implicit social contract to do our part.
Okay.
So not only for the authors, but also the journals, but the journals cannot function properly without having good scientific editors.
And these days, you are an ApJ letter deputy editor. And so what exactly does an ApJ letter deputy editor do?
Well, but my day-to-day duties are not very different than yours, I imagine, or of a normal SC. Except that once in a while, when the main editor, Fred Razio, needs to go on leave or needs to take a break, then I take over all the functions of ApJ letters. That's sort of it's kind of like being a vice president. If the chief is incapacitated or otherwise wants a break, I step in. Otherwise, I just lay low in the background and essentially serve as a normal SC. I do get asked, to help resolve more difficult situations.
Yes.
Once in a while, Yeah.
So roughly how many ApJ letters submissions come in on a week, and how many do you handle as a scientific editor, as an SE?
Honestly, I don't know what the latest statistics are. I'm not very good at remembering these things in terms of the journal overall. But what comes through my inbox is actually a fairly modest number. I would say it's about half a dozen or so per week.
Per week.
And in any one time, my portfolio has like 30, 25, 30 papers that I'm handling.
Right.
But it's somewhat deceptive. The workload is may seem lighter than the normal journal, but actually it's a different kind of workload.
Right.
As everyone knows, ApJ Letters has a mandate to publish things on a very short time scale. So everything is sort of, you know, on speed dial. Okay, there's this always this urgency to it. There's it's very high maintenance and quite stressful at times because the authors expect it, and they, you know, everything has to go very fast. You know.
Bugging any referees lately?
Sorry?
Bugging any referees lately?
Yes, that's a never-ending chore. Yes.
Indeed. So turning to the actual submissions itself, so what do you think makes for a good, solid initial letter submission?
I would say particularly for the letters, which is meant to you know, have higher impact and you know, more catchy. The message and the title has to be, you know, very well defined and very obvious. Okay. You know, you can't read 30 pages just to figure out, you know, what this tome is about. Is as good as the science might be. Okay, so there is that aspect of it. You know, how to have the message, you know, packaged well. I think a good ApJ letter should have a nice, clear story to tell. So the structure of the paper, in my view, is very important. It can't just be a, sort of a technical report just to dump some facts at you. Okay, it has to at the same time convince you. Those are two separate things. You may have content, but the structure and the presentation may not be optimal. So I think the best submissions are ones that go, you know, through really quickly. Not only clearly you have to have a good result, that's new and exciting and all of that, but also how you package it and how well the paper itself is written. It's a piece of prose.
Mm-hmm. Sorry. Yep. So given that, on initial submissions, do you have any tips for ApJ letter authors?
I do. I have a bunch of pet peeves. This stuff I tell my graduate students all the time, but it's okay to repeat it. Just papers in general. Pay attention to submit a high quality item.
Yes.
Please spell check. Okay. Avoid avoidable grammatical mistakes. That really does not put me or the referee in a good frame of mind, right? I like to advise people to avoid excess use of acronyms. You know, your first job is not to spend the first introduction to define, you know, 20 acronyms that you only use once later. That's not helpful.
Hard to read.
The figures, graphics in the tables are very important. I think often that's not, people don't put as much emphasis as they should, because that really helps to tell the story. So a well-designed figure that's attractive, that's self-contained. I always like to say, if you need to read the captions to understand it, it's not a good figure. Go back to the drawing board.
Okay.
So these are very general advice I would give to any author. It's not just for an ApJ letter. You know.
But more so premium at a letters because of the impact factor.
Yes.
Impact is often can be driven by a really good figure.
That's right.
Okay. How about on the flip side? you have any tips for ApJ letter referees?
Well, in general, they should be mindful that ApJ letters are on a shorter fuse. Okay, so don't accept the assignment if you don't think that you can turn in the report in a timely manner. That's probably the only distinction between a letter and a normal journal paper. But in general, referees, this applies to all referees, whether it's for letters or the main journal. Please make the reports constructive.
Okay.
Avoid ad hominem criticisms when if possible, right? And then I would also add that that this is maybe a strange thing to say, but referees sometimes should be mindful that they should display a certain degree of empathy, because there's a human element on the other side. Okay, that is the author. The author could be a student, could be a first-time person who's writing a paper, and there's a lot on the line. This could be the person's PhD. This could be the difference between having a career and not having one. Okay, yeah. So it's important to put yourself in the other shoes, which the referee, of course, has been on the other shoe many times, right? Right. So when giving suggestions and comments, it's important to keep that in mind. I think that makes the reports more constructive and more helpful.
That's an excellent point. Very nice. Good. And so lastly, is there anything else you'd like to share about the editorial process, either ApJ letters specifically, or maybe more generally for the AAS journals?
I guess there's a point that's perhaps not always appreciated, that the final decisions for acceptance of papers is not made by the referee. It's made by the editor. And referees are advisory. And in most cases, of course, we follow their advice. Okay, but the reason to have good scientific editors is that we exert our own evaluation of the situation, and sometimes this is lost both for the authors and for the referees. Like, why didn't you exactly follow what the referee said, or vice versa? At the same time, we're all human and we all have full-time jobs, okay? And I think it's a very good system, but the system may not be perfect. Nothing really is, but the journal and editors is really trying to do their best to keep everyone honest, right? And we try hard to be professional. We try to be prompt. We try to avoid biases and conflicts of interest. Yep. But there's a human element to it, and people should understand that. Okay. And I would say for referees, when circumstances allow, they should try to be good citizens. Everyone publishes a lot of papers, but they would not go through if it were not for the services of our peers who participate. So, yes. So when asked, do try to accept once in a while.
Yes. Those who never accept, they have a little special place in my personal Dante's hell. Yeah, indeed. Very cool. Louis, I want to thank you so much for spending some time today and talking with us about your science and about the AAS journals and about specifically ApJ letters. So thank you.
Well, it's been my pleasure. Thank you very much, Frank.
All right, everyone. Thank you, and we'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.